June 15, 1944, Yawata, Kyushu, Japan. The night sky over southern Japan is still. Crickets sing, waves whisper against the harbor walls, and somewhere in the distance, a temple bell tolls midnight. Then, faintly at first, comes a low, steady rumble. At the Yawata Steelworks, one of Japan's largest industrial complexes, spotlights sweep the sky. Anti-aircraft crews stare upward, searching for the familiar drone of B-17s or B-24s, the heavy bombers that have plagued Germany, but until now, could never reach Japan. Tonight will be different. At 30,000 feet, far above the reach of most Japanese defenses, the first wave of Boeing B-29 Superfortresses crosses the coast. Their silver fuselages gleam faintly in the moonlight. Each aircraft is larger than any bomber Japan has ever faced. Nearly 100 feet long, powered by four 2,200 horsepower Wright R-3350 engines, capable of flying over 3,000 miles without refueling. Inside one of them, call-signed Geraldine of the 58th Bomb Wing, 24-year-old Captain Charles Phillips adjusts his oxygen mask. The cabin hums with the mechanical pulse of pressurization, a sound alien to any previous bomber crew. Frost creeps across the glass of the cockpit canopy as the temperature drops to 30 degrees. We're over the target area, his navigator reports, Yawata below. Phillips peers through the bomb site. Far beneath them, the city is a patchwork of faint lights and blacked-out rooftops. He presses the intercom. Bombs away. The aircraft shudders as 5 tons of explosives tumble into the dark. Seconds later, blossoms of orange flame rise through the smoke. On the ground, Japanese civilians run for cover. Soldiers shout as sirens wail through the industrial district. Anti-aircraft guns bark blindly into the night, but the shells burst thousands of feet below the intruders. A young radar officer at an Imperial Army post near Fukuoka stares at his display astonished. "They're too high," he mutters. "No plane can fly that high."
But the B-29 can.
By dawn, most of the bombers are gone. Only one lost to mechanical failure, not enemy fire. The attack itself inflicts limited damage, but in Tokyo, the psychological impact is seismic. Word reaches the Naval General Staff within hours. Bombers of unknown type, range and altitude impossible. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, chief of the Imperial Japanese Navy's combined fleet, reads the report in silence. For years, Japan's strategy has depended on geography, the idea that its home islands lie beyond the reach of enemy bombers. Now that illusion has vanished. He sets the paper down slowly and says to his aide, "If this is true, then Japan's skies are already lost." Outside, the sun rises over Tokyo Bay, golden, calm, indifferent, as if unaware that the age of the Superfortress has just begun. June 16, 1944, Tokyo, Imperial Navy Headquarters. Rain lashes against the paper windows of the war room. Maps of the Pacific sprawl across the long conference table covered in pins and annotations. Saipan, Tinian, Guam. Outside, the faint rumble of thunder mixes with the distant whine of air raid sirens. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, tall, rigid, and precise, stands before a wall-sized map of Japan's defensive perimeter. The air smells of ink, tobacco, and tension. Beside him, officers from the Army and Navy exchange uneasy glances as the latest intelligence report arrives from the Kyushu Command. The attack on Yawata is confirmed. 47 aircraft, high altitude, long range, minimal losses. Toyoda's aide sets the report before him. "They came from the west, sir, from China. The type identified is Boeing B-29. Toyoda says nothing for several seconds. He adjusts his glasses, reading line by line, lips pressed tight. The numbers are unthinkable. Operational ceiling of 31,000 feet, cruising speed over 350 miles per hour, bomb load of 20,000 pounds. Japan has no aircraft capable of reaching them, no radar that can track them, no guns that can touch them." He exhales softly. "So the Americans have built a machine that can strike us from across the sea." The room is silent. One of the younger officers, Captain Fujita, breaks the quiet. "Sir, our pilots can intercept them with 0 fighters if we climb early enough." Toyoda turns to him sharply. "At 30,000 feet, you'd reach them with half your fuel gone and your guns frozen. These are not the flying fortresses over Europe. This is something else entirely." He looks back at the map, the islands of the Marianas circled in red, now under siege by U.S. Marines. If those fall, the B-29s will no longer need to fly from China. They'll strike Japan directly, every day, with thousands of tons of bombs. Toyoda lowers his voice. "The war is now arithmetic. They build, we bleed." No one answers. The rain drums harder against the glass. Later that night, Toyoda walks alone through the corridors of the Navy Ministry. In the courtyard, he pauses beneath a pine tree and looks up. The storm has cleared. Above Tokyo, the stars glimmer faintly. For years, Japan has believed in its divine protection, that no foreign bomber would ever reach the Emperor's skies. That illusion has been shattered by a single night's raid. Toyoda whispers almost to himself, "We cannot fight an enemy who reaches us before we can even see him." Far away on Saipan, American engineers are already laying down long concrete runways. The war has entered a new age, one measured not in battleships or bayonets, but in altitude, horsepower, and the cold precision of machines. August 1944, Chengdu, China. The airbase shimmers in the heat. Rows of enormous silver bombers sit on sun-baked runways, their wings stretching wide like the arms of giants. Crews in khaki shirts and grease-stained flight suits scramble under their bellies, loading bombs, checking engines, wiping sweat from their faces. To the men of the 20th Air Force, this is the dawn of a new kind of war. A war fought not from trenches or carriers, but from the stratosphere. Colonel Robert Morgan, veteran of Europe and former pilot of the Memphis Belle, inspects his new command, the B-29 Superfortress. He's flown B-17s across the skies of Germany, but even he can't hide his awe. "It's like a battleship with wings," he mutters, and she climbs like a dream. Each B-29 is a technological marvel, a flying pressurized capsule of aluminum and fire. It carries remote-controlled gun turrets, analog computing sites, and enough range to cross an ocean. To most who see it, it's not just an aircraft, it's the embodiment of American industrial power, the product of thousands of factories, millions of man-hours, and the sheer will of a nation that refuses to lose. As the ground crews finish, the pilots gather for briefing. The target, the Imperial Steel Works at Anshan, deep in Manchuria, a flight of over 2,500 miles. The commander outlines the plan with quiet gravity. Altitude 30,000 feet. Expect light flak. Remember, they can't reach us. But don't get complacent. The machine's powerful, but she's temperamental. And she is. The B-29's engines, the massive Wright R-3350s, run hot, often to the edge of failure. Yet the crews climb aboard anyway. At 0400, propellers begin to spin. The runways tremble. One by one, the bombers lift into the darkness, disappearing toward the horizon. Hours later, at 31,000 feet, they cross the coast of Japan. Thin white trails stretch behind them, painting the sky. Below, villages sleep unaware of the future, screaming above their heads. Inside one of the bombers, Gunner Sergeant William Jones peers through the blister turret. "You can see the curvature of the earth," he whispers. "Feels like we're gods up here." But far below in Tokyo, the Imperial General Staff is already receiving frantic reports. Radar operators can barely track the intruders. Fighters are scrambled, Kai-43 Oscars, Kai-44 Tojos, but they can't reach the bomber's altitude. Anti-aircraft guns fire blindly, their shells bursting thousands of feet too low. The B-29s drop their payloads and turn for home. Not a single one is shot down. By nightfall, smoke rises over Anshan. In Tokyo, Admiral Toyoda listens to the latest intelligence update. He says nothing for a long time. Then with quiet resignation, "We are fighting an empire of engineers." His staff glances at him, uncertain if they heard correctly. But Toyoda's gaze is distant, beyond the war maps, beyond the empire. He understands what most of Japan's high command still refuses to see. For the first time in history, a weapon exists that Japan cannot match. Not in courage, not in tactics, not even in sacrifice. And it has wings. March 9th, 1945, Tokyo, Japan, midnight. A warm, dry wind blows across the wooden rooftops of the capital. Children sleep in their futons, mothers tend to small coal stoves, and the night air smells faintly of spring rain. Then comes the drone. At first distant, a low rolling vibration that trembles in the walls. Tokyo's air raid sirens begin to howl. In the black sky above, hundreds of dots approach in formation. 334 B-29 Superfortresses flying from the newly captured island of Tinian in the Marianas. Each carries a belly full of death, M69 napalm incendiaries, designed not to blast, but to burn. At 1:30 a.m., the lead bomber opens its bomb bay doors. A faint clunk, a flash of light, and then the first wave of fire falls. The napalm canisters strike rooftops and burst open, spraying streams of flaming jelly through narrow streets. Within minutes, the city ignites. Whole districts, Asakusa, Kanda, Ueno, vanish in curtains of flame. From 5,000 feet up, Tail Gunner Sergeant Harold Schultz stares down through the glowing haze. "God help them," he whispers. "It's like the end of the world." The B-29 crews can feel the heat from 2 miles away, rising through the fuselage. Updrafts toss their aircraft like leaves. Below, 16 square miles of Tokyo burn in a single night. Over 100,000 civilians perish. On the ground, firestorms whip through the streets at 200 miles per hour. Wooden houses explode from the pressure. Rivers boil. Whole families dive into canals for safety, only to suffocate from lack of oxygen. From his quarters in the Naval Ministry, Admiral Soemu Toyoda watches the glow on the horizon, a crimson line where the city meets the sky. He knows what it means. Japan's defenses are gone, its industry is crippled, its spirit is breaking. He turns to his aide, voice hoarse. No Navy, no Air Force, no homeland left to protect. Tell me, what is there for us to command now? The aide has no answer. In the following weeks, the inferno spreads from city to city. Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe. The B-29s no longer need to fly at high altitude. With Japan's Air Force destroyed, they descend to 7,000 feet, flying low and slow, methodically reducing entire cities to ash. Even Emperor Hirohito, sheltered deep within the palace, cannot ignore the trembling of the ground, the distant roar that never ceases. In American planning rooms on Guam, General Curtis LeMay studies aerial photographs with a cigar clenched between his teeth. He taps one with his finger.
If we burn them hard enough, he says, they'll have to stop fighting.
By May, over 60 Japanese cities have been bombed. Millions are homeless. Yet Japan does not surrender. And so, in July, LeMay and his superiors approve Project Silverplate, the final weapon. A single bomb, carried by a single B-29, meant to end the war in one stroke. Admiral Toyoda, worn and hollow-eyed, receives the first reports of a mysterious new American weapon. He already knows the truth before anyone tells him. They will not stop, he murmurs, staring at the map of Japan. They will burn us until there is nothing left to burn. August 6, 1945, Hiroshima, Japan. A clear blue morning. Cicadas hum in the trees. The city wakes slowly. Trams rattle along the streets, school children walk in lines toward their classrooms, and the smell of breakfast drifts through open windows. At 8:15 a.m. the calm breaks. High above the city, at 31,000 feet, a silver B-29 named Enola Gay banks gently toward its target. Inside the bomb bay rests an object no one aboard has ever seen detonate, a 9,700-pound device called Little Boy. Colonel Paul Tibbets, the pilot, glances at his watch. Bomb away! The aircraft jolts as the weapon drops, tumbling silently for 43 seconds. The men aboard pull hard into a turn, racing away.
And then, light.
A burst brighter than the sun, the air itself turns white, then red, then disappears in flame. In a single instant, Hiroshima ceases to exist. Buildings vaporize. Shadows are burned into stone. 80,000 souls vanish in the first heartbeat. Tens of thousands more stagger through fire and silence, their world reduced to dust and wind. Far away, aboard a warship in Tokyo Bay, Admiral Soemu Toyoda receives the first fragmented reports. A single bomb destroyed an entire city. He sets down his teacup, stunned. A single bomb? It defies every law of war he has ever known. 2 days later, he learns of the next, Nagasaki, and the confirmation that both attacks were carried out by B-29s. The same aircraft he had first read about 1 year earlier, the same machine he had warned his superiors could not be stopped.
Now that prediction has come full circle.
In his journal, Toyoda writes that night, "The enemy's reach is limitless. Their bombers have become the voice of heaven itself. I fear we are witnessing the end, not just of the empire, but of all reason." Across the city, officers of the Imperial General Staff argue in desperation, some urging surrender, others demanding one last stand. Yet deep down, every man in that room understands. Japan can no longer fight against the sky. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's voice breaks through static on every radio in Japan, the first time his subjects have ever heard him speak. His tone is calm, almost detached, yet it carries the weight of an empire's collapse. The enemy has employed a new and most cruel bomb. We must endure the unendurable. In that moment, Admiral Toyoda closes his eyes. The war he has lived and breathed for his entire life is over. Days later, as the American occupation begins, Toyoda stands on the veranda of the Navy Ministry, watching the first formation of Allied bombers flying low over Tokyo, not to destroy, but to observe. They pass slowly, casting vast shadows over a city still smoldering from months of fire. He turns to his aide, voice hollow but steady. "When I saw that first B-29, he says, I knew this day would come." The aide asks quietly, "Do you regret not saying more?" Toyoda shakes his head. Would it have changed anything? No. The moment they built that plane, the war was lost. We were only waiting to realize it. Above them, the last of the bombers disappear into the horizon, vast, silent, and untouchable. The Superfortress, born from the ambition of engineers, has become something more than a weapon. It is the final messenger of an age that burned itself out in the skies. And as the rising sun sets on Japan, the world stands beneath a new shadow, one cast not by armies or empires, but by the boundless power of human invention. September 1945, Iwo Jima Airfield. The war is over, yet the airfield hums with activity. Lines of B-29. Superfortresses stand idle in the Pacific sun, their engines silent, their silver skins streaked with salt and smoke. Mechanics move slowly now, their motions no longer urgent, cleaning, cataloging, preparing the giants for storage or scrap. The crews that once flew them home from hell stand beside their aircraft, staring at the mountains in the distance. For men like Captain Charles Phillips, the same pilot who dropped bombs on Yawata over a year ago, victory feels strangely hollow. He looks down at the island below him, scarred and gray from the battles fought just months earlier. Thousands of men had died here so that his bomber could land, refuel, and strike deeper into Japan. Every mile we gained cost blood, he says quietly. Every bomb we dropped cost souls. Behind him, a ground officer paints a single line of black across the nose of a B-29, the sign of decommissioning. The warbird, once unstoppable, is now just metal. And yet, even stripped of power, the Superfortress remains an object of awe. It had carried the war farther than any machine before it, from the jungles of India to the skies over Tokyo, from cold Chinese runways to the mushroom clouds that ended an empire. Its legacy, like the fire it unleashed, could never be contained. Tokyo, October 1945. The Imperial Navy Ministry stands in ruins. Amid the debris, the flag of Japan flutters weakly in the autumn wind. In one of the surviving offices, Admiral Soemu Toyoda sits at a bare desk, writing a final report for the Allied occupation authorities. The paper is brief, a technical assessment of Japan's wartime command and the factors that led to defeat. But between the lines, it reads as something else, a quiet confession. He writes, "Our armies were brave, our pilots courageous, but courage cannot challenge physics. The Americans built a weapon beyond our reach, and thus beyond our comprehension." Toyota pauses, gazing at the horizon where B-29s once appeared like silver ghosts. "They built the future," he murmurs, "while we were still fighting the past." He signs his name, sets down his pen, and closes the file. Outside, the streets of Tokyo are alive again. Children playing, women rebuilding, merchants reopening shops amid the rubble. The same sky that once rained fire now holds only clouds. Years later, Washington, D.C. In the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, one B-29 remains perfectly preserved, Enola Gay. Its polished aluminum body gleams under the lights untouched by time. Visitors walk beneath it in silence. Some gaze in reverence, others in horror. Each rivet, each propeller blade tells two stories, one of triumph, one of tragedy. The Superfortress was the pinnacle of its age, yet also the herald of a new one, an era where wars would no longer be fought for land, but for survival itself. Back in Japan, Admiral Toyoda dies in quiet obscurity, never tried as a war criminal, never celebrated as a hero. But among the few who remember him, his warning still echoes, a whisper from the dawn of the atomic age. No wall, no fleet, no army can defend against what men can build in the sky. And he was right. From the B-29 would come the jet bomber, the intercontinental missile, the spacecraft. Humanity had conquered distance, but in doing so, it had brought destruction closer than ever before. The Superfortress did not merely end a war, it ended an era, the age of nations untouched by the sky. When Admiral Toyoda saw that first B-29 in 1944, he was not just witnessing a new weapon, he was witnessing the future. A future that, once born, could never again be undone.